Hey guys, and welcome back to it now for something a little bit different. Episode 74. We are here, and it's Sunday, and we're recording another episode. Welcome back, Mr. John Nance, Mr. Korean Cool. It's good to see you, buddy.
Annyeonghaseyo. Happy 4th of July, America. What's
Yeah,
going on, buddy?
it's good to see you, buddy. Glad to be back, and we're bringing in the summer, right? You would think it's summertime, but here we are. We're going back to school, guys.
Oh,
I guess I got left back. I have to go do summer school. This is part of my summer school program. So, as of tomorrow, on the 7th, you'll get our episode of 3 o'clock high, which we recorded on Thursday. And then the following Monday on the 14th, you'll get this episode, which is The Last American Virgin. After that, you guys will see us more towards the end of the month. We're trying to figure out exactly what day. So there might be a week, maybe 2 weeks tops, where you don't get to see these mugs, but that's okay, you know.
yeah. I might be wrestling from, recovering from my wrestling with Eskimos and bear cubs. So who knows what's going to happen?
You get into a fight with a penguin, and
Oh, I don't
hopefully they
mess with
do things.
penguins. They fight dirty.
Yeah, I mean they look cute, it's like I think someone mentioned koala bears are apparently very vicious. I didn't.
Oh, God, yeah.
And you would think a koala bear, I mean, that's like basically the equivalent of like a stuffed animal, but apparently they're vicious little motherfuckers.
No, don't mess with koala bears. Do not
Uh,
met. They look cute, but no,
until,
they don't. No, no, don't do
until
it.
you start touching their, what do they eat?
The eucalyptus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nah.
But anyway, here I am up. The episode's only been going for 30 seconds and I'm already off on a tangent.
Yes, we are.
I'm consistently off on a tangent. You can always count on that. So that brings us today, you guys. We're going to be talking about The Last American Virgin. Before we do, we'll ask. I know you probably don't have much or anything. I have like one or two things. Have you watched anything besides Last American Virgin? I know it's been an insane weekend.
Oh, tell me about it. Yeah, it's been insane. So, wife and I did a rewatch of A Working Man, that Jason Statham movie that came out earlier this year.
Yeah.
This time though, we were picking out because the first watch we were like, where did we see this actor and actress before? So we were like playing, Where's Waldo with Who's Waldo with the actors and actresses. And then, as we mentioned in the last episode, right? I was hanging out with Troy, but I was actually hanging out with Troy this past Friday. We were playing some Dungeons and Dragons, right? We were getting our dungeon crawling on. And then after that, we sat down and did a rewatch of, and I love this movie. I can't tell you how much I love this movie. Did a rewatch of DC Cab.
Nice.
Yes.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think they said at the end of this week's episode. I think him and Brad are covering that next week. I'm fairly certain for the show.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, I haven't seen that movie in years, but I just remember it's such an eclectic cast, like a bunch of misfits, and it's such a funny movie.
It is, and it's definitely an 80s movie, and it's definitely not a movie they could remake. Well, they probably could try, but it's one of those, let's not even, try to remake that right about now.
He might get canceled.
Yeah,
That's,
exactly.
that's
I don't know
cool.
about, how about you? Anything?
So I got a couple things, and so I know I mentioned I was going to see that Jurassic World movie, and I did, and I will say this much. So I've seen the original film. I think I saw the first three original films. Then I saw the first one with Chris Pratt, and for the most part, I like the very first film. I like the very first Chris Pratt film. I didn't see the two Chris Pratt sequels, so there was a little bit of a gap when I went into this one, but it wasn't bad. I mean, it's predictable. You got Scarlett Johansson as our main star. In supporting roles, we got Marshala Ali, who's supposed to be our Blade. If they ever make that Blade movie, I don't know if that's ever going to
No,
happen.
actually, that's dead.
Oh, okay.
That movie's now dead.
We got Jonathan Bailey, Rupert Friend, and we got an actor named Manuel Garcia Rufo. And basically, the premise is Scarlett Johansson's like a badass. Go figure. That's Scarlett Johansson.
No.
She's like a gun for hire mercenary type character. Well, she's broke, and this big brother medical company approaches her. Basically, they want to develop this new medicine, and how they're going to develop this new medicine is they need 3 blood samples from 3 different dinosaurs. We find out apparently one of the islands is still out there and has dinosaurs roaming on it. Apparently, the island was an island they were using as a research facility to crossbreed dinosaurs to kind of make more money because obviously they have like the Big Brother wanted to make more money, so they figured if they crossbreed the dinosaurs that would be more of an appeal to get people to come into the park. So there's this island, I guess, that nobody ever knew about. So basically, she's approached to go to this island and basically retrieve this along with a bunch of other motley characters. And it's basically about her trying to get what she needs, survive on the island, and then get home. Along the way, they end up rescuing this family whose boat capsizes. So they're caught up in this mess. And of course, like every Jurassic Park movie, this is where I get into the negatives slightly. There is the one-dimensional character that right off the get-go. Right off the get-go, this guy's going to be the bad guy. Like, it's obvious. He's going to eventually be the dick, and he's going to turn on everybody. So you have that obvious thing going on. And then you have the people that you care about and that you connect with. Overall, it's not a bad little movie. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. Do you have to see it in the movie theaters? I would say if you don't have a movie pass, skip it, wait for it to come out on Paramount Plus or HBO Max. But it wasn't the worst thing. I went in with really, really low expectations. I just wanted to get out to the movie theaters and use my pass because I have one of those passes that I pay for. So I try to use it every week. It was better than what I thought. Then I moved on. He's like, yes, I knew it, John. I knew you were going to see that. And it was good. Hey, it wasn't god awful. I will say that much. And that's not much praise there, but it wasn't god awful. What I will say really kind of pissed me off was fucking Kevin Smith. Fuck Kevin Smith. All right. I used to love Kevin Smith, but the days of Clerks, Mallrats, Clerks 2 even, fucking the first Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, right. Tusk, Red State, those movies, those days are long gone because that fucking Jay and Silent Bob reboot fucking blows for the most part.
Oh.
Clerks 3, everybody's sucking Kevin Smith's cock for Clerks 3. Fuck that. He fucking killed Dante's wife and kid. Then he fucking kills Dante. The rest of the movie is okay, but fuck Kevin Smith. But here I am. I was like, you know what? I don't know if I want to pay money to rent this. So I went to my local library. They had the newest movie he did, the 4:30 movie. Now, okay, this is a little bit better than fucking Jay and Silent Bob reboot. I don't know, it's probably on the same level as Clerks 3. It's basically takes place in the 80s. This kid has this crush on this girl. He loves the movies. You can see like he's basically a young version of Kevin Smith. He's obsessed with the movies. He has a couple of misfit friends. And apparently this girl that he had this crush on about a year ago, he made his move and he kind of blew it. And he blew her off for a year. So a year later, he calls her up and he like tries to be Mr. Smooth Guy. And he's like, hey, why don't we like do something? And she's like, remember you blew me off a year ago and you haven't talked to me since then? So basically, he manages to convince her, I know you don't do that.
Don't do that.
Especially if you're a young, horny teenager who wants to get laid, you know? but anyway, he basically managed to convince her to go on a date. She's busy, she's working all day. So he meets up with his misfit group of buddies and they go spend the day at the movie theater. And it's basically about the shenanigans of spending the day in the movie theater, going movie hopping. Remember those days?
Yeah, yeah.
Sneaking from one movie to another. It's about that. And there's a couple like typical like Kevin Smith like funny moments. And there are some heartfelt moments when the girl shows up again and they actually get their like first, I guess, second date. But the problem is like Kevin Smith used to have balls. Like even some people like say the original Jay and Silent Bob or the original Mallrats, or even some people are dismissive about Clerks 2. But like he had that Kevin Smith sensey humor. This is like that filtered through like a Hallmark Channel movie. It's like he was like neutered. It's like someone snipped his balls and took away everything that made Kevin Smith and his identity of Kevin Smith. They took it all away and they neutered it. And this is what we got. And it's like, when I saw the trailer for the movie, I was super excited. I was like, okay, this is going to give me those Mallrats, but maybe with a little bit of the heart, like something like Jersey Girl
Yeah.
or Chasing Amy. I thought you were going to get like the combination of the two, which is the perfect in my opinion. That's like the perfect Kevin Smith is when you get the Kevin Smith humor but mixed with that heart. And this thing was just fucking neutered, man. I will say the actors, they were good. And we have a lot of cameos. Of course, he even has like celebrities like Method Man pops up for a minute. We have Justin Long, Jason Lee, of course, his daughter, because it's his daughter. We have Dietrich Bader, who pops up again, Rosario Dawson, Ken Jeong is in it. So it's not the worst thing out there. It just, I get so aggravated when I see a filmmaker that I used to love, and I just see the fact that they are now just going downhill. It's like they're just doing the easy thing. You know what I mean? It's like when you have the ability to make quality and you don't, it's just like, why am I continuing to support you? Luckily, it didn't cost me anything because it was a library. It was a library rental. So it cost me a thing. It wasn't playing on any of the streaming services, unfortunately. So,
Well, there's probably a reason. I mean, if it wasn't as good, I always said this about Kevin Smith. Yeah, his earlier works, he was willing, to put his toes over the edge, make some interesting and some, some would say controversial, but I thought there were just, great choices he made and how he approached things. And yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't know. It's kind of like, the comparison that Troy and I joke about. It's like, Tom Cruise and that Scientology. I mean, they must like can or bottle it, and he just like, Scientology, and he makes these movies. Kevin Smith, I think when he went vegan or something, I think maybe that had like the same effect. Like took away all his gusto to get back to that edge. Because you're right. I think you best describe it right. He's like taking a safe approach.
yeah.
You know,
And that's what
and
people
it's
don't want from him. People,
yeah,
no fan wants it from him. You know what happens a couple of years ago, right before he made the Jay and Silent reboot and the Clerks 3 movie, he had that heart attack.
yeah,
And apparently, like, that scared the shit out of him. He went on a huge diet. He's
yeah,
smoking as much pot. He got his life in order, which is fine. That's great. But, like, you still, as an artist, you want to put stuff out there that reflects your personality. And, like, when I look at, like, not Jay and Silent Bob reboot, but when I look at Clerks 3, the premise of confrontation with your own mortality,
yeah.
like, you get that. And even this one, like, the main character in this movie is basically a dial back to him as a young teenager. There's no way it's not. Write what you know, write what you love. That's awesome. But you still have to have the stuff that made you relevant to begin with. Because
Yep.
if you're just giving us a first draft or a second draft of your script, I mean, it's not going to do much,
Yeah.
But anyway, I've talked on way too long about my rant on Kevin Smith. He just pisses me off so much. I don't even know why I watched this fucking movie. I really don't.
See, this is therapeutic. Let it out, because other people are probably going to watch it. Go, yes, yes.
No, I mean, I know some people that liked it, and I wanted to like it. And there are things that you can like about it. There are moments, but it's like I said, it's the hallmark version of Kevin Smith. That's the only way to describe it. Which brings us to 82. I'll transition in the worst possible way. 1982, guys, to our movie today, The Last American Virgin. And wow, this is a movie that I will get into. I don't want to express how I feel about it or anything that's interesting about it yet. Before I do, normally I don't talk about producers, and I'm not going to go into too much conversation about the people that produced the movie, but I do want to talk about it briefly. This was produced by the Cannon Group. Now, if you listen to this channel, you listen to any of our friends like Not a Bomb, Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema, any of the podcasts out there, people know Cannon. Cannon was very popular in the 80s, but they started out in 1967 by two guys, Dennis Friedland and Chris Dewey. And they had immediate success producing, believe it or not, of all things, soft porn films. Go figure. You can always count on soft porn to sell, guys, especially during the late 60s and the 70s. By 1970s, though, they actually started producing regular films. They produced films on a much larger production scale, and they did stuff like Joe with Peter Boyle, which actually did pretty well and won quite a bit of acclaim. And they did their formula was basically focusing on keeping the budgets low, kind of similar to what Roger Corman did.
Yep.
You try to keep the budgets at like $300,000 or less. So the less you're putting out there into the world, your chances are of recuperating your money and then being able to go make another film. But unfortunately, by 1979, they ran into some financial issues, and Israeli cousins Menahem Golan and Yoram Globus purchased the company for a mere $500,000. They produced a wide variety of films in different genres, and I think this is, I think a lot of us growing up in the 80s, if you went to your video store, you'd walk in and probably most of the stuff that you'd see in a certain corner of the video store would be dedicated to genre films. Like I'm talking like horror, sci-fi, barbarian, anything you can think of that was a genre film. And I would guarantee probably 75% of that was canon. And they produced basically a huge amount of B movies. Some of them got released in the movie theaters. A lot of them went direct to video. But the reason I'm talking about and the reason it's relevant is at that point in time, it was a big deal. It was a big deal. VCRs were becoming more and more affordable. You could market films, a lot of them straight to video, and they would be successful. Now, Canon produced a ton of different films, just a couple that you guys know, and there's a ton more. Enter the Ninja, American Ninja, Cobra. There we go, martial arts. Yeah, I know that would ring a bell with you, John.
Oh yeah.
I got Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo, Life Force. Oh, there you go, some Toby Hooper. Oh yeah,
Matilda May. What are you talking about?
Matilda May.
Back on track. Focus.
Or as my friend would say, fuck it. Stuff like good old Stallone with Over the Top, which I still adore that movie. Superman 4, and of course, Masters of the Universe. Now, what's interesting, and a lot of people don't know this about these guys, is even though they were known for a lot of these B movies and a lot of this direct-to-video trash, they did manage to squeeze in some pretty big scores. Every once in a while, they'd win some awards. Like, they have a foreign film, a Dutch film that came out in 1987, called The Assault, that actually won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. And they also produced the film with Eric Roberts, Runaway Train, which is also, and John Voight, which also was an Academy Award winner. So they managed to slip some quality projects in there throughout the time period. But I did wanted to bring them up only because, like I said, they're the company that released Last American Virgin. Before I go any further, I'm just going to ask you, John, I know you're, like I said, you're around my age. You're the time of the VHS. How was your experience with Canon and their films? Have you digested a lot of their gourmet goodness?
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, you're talking about movies, the names that he mentioned, folks, earlier, if you recognize them, it's because you've seen them up on their credits, right? The Golden Globus films, right? That's the guys that he's talking about. But you're talking about, what was it? Death Wish 2, 3, Missing in Action with Chuck Norris, Missing in Action 2. Yeah, the ninja movies, all the martial arts movies, the different crazy ones. It's Breakin' 2, Shrimp Boogaloo, keep it going, buddy. Popping and locking. Hell, you're talking about, and even some of the crazy ones, because let's face it, folks, early 80s to the late 80s. I mean, what was the one? Like cheerleader party, cheerleader beach party, something, like along those lines, right? So, like you said,
like the Slumber Party Massacre, stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like that. I mean, you hit it, right? It's the genres, action or martial arts, or back in, like you said, the soft porn type movies, right? With the TNA all over the place, right? They said, we're going to make movies from A to Z, and lots of hits, lots of misses, but the point was they did it because that's what they wanted to do. And for me, man, a Canon Group, I forget the author, but there's a book out there that has that goes over the history of a damn near a lot of the major Canon Group films. I'll make sure when we post this up, I drop a link to it, but it's just I loved them because they were simple films, they were fun films, and it just helped shape, unfortunately, my brain. What's some of your favorites?
No, absolutely, dude. Like I said, Over the Top, that was like a staple. I watched that countless times, but there were a lot of those type movies. They put out a lot of those sex comedies in the 80s that I shouldn't have been watching as a young teen, which I watched way too many. There was a lot of those direct-to-video basic horror ripoffs of the more popular franchises. It's escaping my brain at the moment, but I'm sure they're responsible for a lot of the Star Wars type knockoff films that were produced. They probably have at least 2 or 3 of them under their belt. Between Canon and Corman Films, they did a bunch of those type of things. But then, like I said, just the ones I mentioned, like Life Force,
Yeah.
It's Toby Hooper, like you said, Matilda May. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so fucking batshit that you can't help not but like it. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you're talking crazy American Ninja with was it Michael Dudikoff? You know, to Invasion USA again with Chuck Norris, but then Gas Pump Girls, folks.
oh, there you go.
You can pretty much guess from the title what's happening in that movie. But that's what I'm
Jason
talking about,
Thompson,
right?
guys.
It's that range, it's that different genre they hit.
No, absolutely, man, absolutely. So I guess at that point we'll get into our actual director. Now, this gentleman is a guy named Boaz Davidson. He was born in Tel Aviv, Israel. He graduated from London Film School and then moved to the United States in 1979. He joined the Cannon Group, where he oversaw production on films such as Going Bananas, Delta Force, American Cyborg, and most notably a remake of his own film Lemon Popsicle, which was turned into the last American version. So briefly, just for a brief second, so this guy Boaz Davidson made this movie under the name of Lemon Popsicle in Israel. He made the original version of this film, and this film is basically based off, to some degree, his own life experience. That was in 1978. And then, believe it or not, he would go on to make these Lemon Popsicle films. Would go on. I think there were like 5 or 6 different sequels. Maybe there was at least 5 or 6. I didn't write down the exact number.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them, and they're hard to come by. The original one, Lemon Popsicle, is pretty easy to come by, and it's worth checking out. Basically, the big distinction is while this film, the last American version, takes place in the 80s, I believe the Lemon Popsicle series is supposed to take place in like the 60s.
Right.
So you hear like a lot of 50s music and that kind of stuff in there. But it's definitely worth seeking out. It's very similar, but also kind of different in its own way. In 92, Davidson would move on from Cannon Films because unfortunately Cannon Films ran into some money issues. They basically, long story short, they overextended themselves. They were putting out too many films, spending too much money. The budget started to balloon, and they just went under. But he joined New Image Films, and he continued to write, direct, and produce. In 1996, New Image formed a new film company called Millennium Films, and this is where you probably really know this guy's work. He oversaw the production and development on films like The Expendables, Rambo 4, Righteous Kill, 16 Blocks, Mechanic. So he did a bunch of stuff where he worked as in the production and development area. He did direct some films, but like I said, he's more known, I think, as a producer. He directed, like I said, the original Lemon Popsicle. He directed Going Steady, Hot Bubblegum, which is, I think, the second Lemon Popsicle movie. Lemon Popsicle sequel, yes. He did a film called X-Ray, Private Popsicle, which I guess is the third movie. Yeah. It really puts in the franchise here. I guess I think the idea was, and that one I think you can actually find on YouTube. I didn't get a chance to watch it, but that one they do have on YouTube. I guess it's the guys all go into the military. That's the premise. He did a movie called Going Bananas, Dutch Treat, American Cyborg. He produced stuff like Conan the remake and a bunch of other stuff. When we get into our cinematographer,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask, are you familiar with the guy's work?
So one of the ones I actually saw this because it came on HBO. That Going Bananas movie. It stars Dom DeLuise and J.J. Walker. Folks, J.J. Walker, from Good Times, Dynamite! And I thought it was going to be awesome, right? Because it's got 2 of my favorite, actors back then growing up. That movie's so bad. It's so bad.
Oh, no.
Last week's episode from Not a Bomb Podcast, they talked about Red Sonja. Boaz Davidson is actually a producer, or I think the executive producer, for the upcoming 2025 version of Red Sonja. Yes. So this guy is still around.
No, it's awesome. Because like I said, when you look at the stuff that he's produced, like he seems to have given up on the directing stuff, but like I said, those Expendable movies are still relevant. The Rambo 4, there's a lot of stuff that he's still pumping out.
Absolutely.
And sadly, I say sadly, supposedly they were talking with Brett Ratner to do a remake of Last American Virgin. Now, that was back in like 2014. I don't see any updates on it, so hopefully that's a no-go. Because Brett Ratner isn't what I would call Not to be mean, but he's not what I would call a talented voice in the world of art. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, yeah, they talked about that, and along the lines, of course, they talked about also if they're going to do that. Someone else said, "Well, if you're going to do that, we're going to do a remake of Porky's." No, leave those classics alone.
My Last American Version is already a remake of Lemon Popsicle. So how many times do you need to do a remake of the same movie? When we get into cinematography, we have a guy named Adam Greenberg. He worked on Lemon Popsicle. Now, here's one. He worked with Sam Fuller on The Big Red One in 1980. Now, if you haven't seen that one, guys, now let me say Sam Fuller is one of my favorite directors. I love Sam Fuller. Yeah. And this one is a really unnerving look at war. I think they're telling a story in a way that really doesn't get told very often.
Yeah, Big Red One. If you have not seen it, folks, do yourself a favor. It's cinema gold. I still remember that movie to this day. It hits. You know, if you're a fan of Lee Marvin, and you know Mark Hamill, check out what Mark Hamill can do besides swing a lightsaber and fuck up a Star Wars franchise. I mean, come on.
We got Terminator, the original, Private Resort, Once Bitten, Iron Eagle, another personal favorite.
Iron Eagle.
I love it, man. I love it. Near Dark, and Alien Nation. So this guy's got some pretty good street cred. He obviously has a lot more, but those are the ones that I was like, oh man.
Yeah, and I got to throw it out there because he also worked on Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker's Rush Hour.
And that's supposedly they're making a sequel. I don't know if it's going to happen, but supposedly they will.
We'll see. I heard the same, but we'll see.
When we get into our editing, we have a guy named Brunia Davidson, his Last American Virgin, Private Popsicle, Dutch Treat, and Blood Run. Not too much, but a little bit, mostly genre fare. Now, we don't actually have a composer for this. We actually have a musical coordinator. I will say that the soundtrack is banging on this, guys. If you grew up in the 80s, the soundtrack is banging. They actually...
Hell yeah.
I was watching a behind-the-scenes interview, and they said that's where they spent the most money. It wasn't the film, but just procuring the soundtrack. I mean, you've got bands like The Police. You got Devo with Whip It. Whip it good. Yeah, exactly. You got The Cars. You got Blondie. You got Casey and the Sunshine Band. You got Lionel Richie and the Commodores. Oh, man, that song is just devastating.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
You got Journey and you got U2, man. You guys got these bands, and that's back when these bands were in their prime. You really got an amazing soundtrack. I find myself a lot of times at work, I'll go on YouTube, and I'll just put like a soundtrack to a movie I love. And then while I'm doing my job, because I clean for a living, I'm a custodian, I'll have that on in the background. And that's one of those soundtracks I've gone back to on multiple occasions, just because you get like a mix of the 80s.
Yeah,
you know?
It's not just a mix of the 80s. It's some of the songs that were, key, like comic book collecting, right? Key issues. These were like key songs. And, to your point about the budget. So that was the one thing I'm revisiting that I was like, man, I wonder what they spent for these soundtracks. This is like the third time they played the same song in the movie. So it's like, we spent all our money. We don't have any more songs. We're going to replay them over and over. But it's an awesome soundtrack. It really is.
Yeah, and I think I think part of the reason they played certain songs, I think there are a couple of key moments when we get to the script where there's a couple of things that are kind of being hammered. There are certain points that are being made, especially with our main lead character, Gary. And I feel like they do it to kind of get the point home, to kind of really push that point home to the main character. Of course, he never fucking learns, but they're certainly trying. And it's the same way, like, when I say I'm a huge fan of Cameron Crowe, I'm a huge fan of Cameron Crowe up to that fucking dumb movie Aloha. and maybe that fucking We Bought a Zoo movie. I mean, that was tolerable. But if you ignore those films forward and everything before those films, Cameron Crowe is another director that I love. Yep. And part of the reason I love him is not because he's relying upon music, but he uses music heavily to enhance a scene. And when I think about like Almost Famous, obviously a perfect example, Singles, even Jerry Maguire, he's one of those directors that uses music to enhance a film. And so that brings us to our cast. Now, what's interesting about the cast is most of these guys, they didn't have a lot of background experience. Most of these guys, it was either they were cutting their teeth the first time or they had just done like little things. Like Lawrence Monoson, our main actor playing the role of Gary, he had popped up in little things like episodes of Different Strokes, Silver Spoon, stuff like that. But he was only 16 at the time he auditioned. And a problem that he was having with all of his auditions was that people liked the performances that he was doing in the auditions, but they wouldn't give him the role because he was 16 and that was going to limit his time on set. So when he was offered the role, the director automatically connected and he said, hold on, give me a minute. And he talked to the producers and they came back and they said, we're going to give you the role because they really saw the main character. Because like I said, it's based off the director, and he really saw Lawrence Monoson accurately portraying that. But he said, come back later on with your ID. So this is when Gary went into full panic mode. Lawrence went into full panic mode. And he reached to his mom and he said, Mom, they want to give me the part, but they're going to fire me the minute they find out that I'm only 16. And she's like, oh, hold on, I got some friends. And of course, the way he explains the story is his mom has some shady friends. And basically, they managed to put together a fake ID. And later on, he came back to the producers and the director, and they knew it was a fake ID, but they could at least say that, like, they
plausible deniability, right?
Yes, that's the words I'm looking for. Thank you, John. So yeah, you know him possibly from different television stuff. He popped up, believe it or not, in the movie Mask in '85. He popped up in some.
That was you're talking about the Eric Stoltz.
Yeah.
He lucked out. That's a great movie, folks.
Yeah, he pops up in that. He pops up in an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. He does some episodes of ER. Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Of course, they're a bunch of liars because it's not the final chapter. And there's fucking 20 of those fucking movies. An episode of Star Trek Enterprise. And the list goes on. Like later on in his career, he would just pop up a lot in walk-on roles for television and stuff like that. But this is for me, I don't know about you, but this is the only movie I remember him distinctly from. I don't know if there's anything that you remember him as a viewer. Are you familiar with his work?
Some of the TV stuff, when they did Enterprise, because again, I'm a Star Trek nerd, his face immediately recognized him. But that's why, I don't know why, but when you said The Mask,
you were thinking like a cartoon. They had a cartoon.
I was thinking about the fucking Jim Carrey movie. I was like, what? Oh, wait a minute, But yeah, it was nice to see him when he popped up on Enterprise, because I think after a while, it's like you didn't see him at all. But then as soon as I saw his face, I was like, oh my gosh, there he is. Yeah.
No, it's awesome. Our lead love interest is Diane Franklin playing the role of Karen. Now, Karen, she's another one. She started off her career with modeling. She did theater. She did a bunch of commercials, and she did like a couple episodes on a soap opera. Here we go. 6 episodes on As the World Turns. But the last American version was where she really cut her teeth in her very first role. Then she would go on to stuff like Amityville 2, The Possession. I don't know. I remember that one. That was like one of those weird movies.
Yeah, it was.
Not entirely successful, but they can't all be. She's done stuff like Better Off Dead, which I think is the one after Last American Version. When I think of her and her work, that's the one that is wonderful because she just takes that part and she's just wonderful in it. I mean, obviously, John
Cusack,
role, but she has a really great supporting role. Terror Vision in '86, which is another fun, like campy sci-fi.
It's so campy. It's so it is so off the wall. Awesome.
Yeah. She does stuff like pop up in Charles in Charge, Matlock, and Freddy's Nightmares, the TV show. And then, of course, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure,
Yes. She's one of the princesses. Yes.
She does stuff like How I Got into College, which is the same guy that did The Better Off Dead. Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And then, she took a little bit of a break because she got married. She had some kids. Believe it or not, nowadays she's teaching in a high school. She's doing that. She's doing a bunch of conventions, and she's actually still doing a lot of indie stuff. Like in 2023, she did a horror movie called Waking Nightmare.
Yeah.
She did a film called The Dark Room, Angel with a Gun, and she has something coming in the next year called Vampire. So I know, right? But she's still working, She's still working.
Yeah.
And she does conventions, and she's actually a really nice person. I almost had her on the show last year. And unfortunately, my health was not doing well, so I had to cancel. I just never got around to rescheduling it. But she was actually going to come on the show. I was going to do an interview with her.
Okay, you better call her back up now and get her on right now. I need to talk to Diane Franklin right
I
now.
mean, listen, she's one of the nicest people. She's like
She
super,
is.
super nice. She's super nice.
She's very appreciative of her fan base, and she gives back to what the fans have given her over the years.
Yeah,
and she's also she pub was it is it two? She's got 2 books out, right?
yeah. Well,
I think she's a pub. You
on the
do?
website. Yeah, it's
That's awesome. So it's awesome. She is really one of those down to earth folks that just call her right now.
Yeah, I'll try to reach out to her. I'll be like, because I reached out to her and then I just kind of lost track. But
yeah,
I know if we do it like a Better Off Day, we can follow it up with an interview. It's a possible idea.
There you go.
If you're still watching my show, Diane, just remember that. Next up, we have actor named Steve Antin. He's playing Rick, Gary's best friend. And oh man, we got some stuff to unpack about that later on. With best friends like Rick, I don't know. But anyway, he started off in his career early on doing stuff like, believe it or not, a music video. I can make words, guys. A music video. Rick Springfield, Jesse's Girl. Believe it or not, he pops up in that music video. He does stuff like The Goonies, Sweet 16. Again, Amazing Stories. We go back to Amazing Stories.
Yep.
He was in The Accused. SFW, dialing back to Mr. Stephen Dorff in 94. And then he was in a film called Till There Was You in 97. From what I understand, and I forgot to write some of his directorial credits, but apparently these days he stepped into the directing chair, and apparently he's become a pretty well-known director. He's made a bunch of films.
Oh, yeah, director, producer. He did Burlesque. That was I think 2010.
Burlesque. Yeah.
He's also a producer. Pussycat Dolls. He's been a producer of some of their shows. And you mentioned if you don't recognize, we know the movies, folks. We say Goonies, right? Well, Who was he in Goonies? He stayed in character. He was the dick Troy.
Do you hear that, Troy?
Not Troy, but
no,
Troy. But and then in Accused, it's not a major role, but it's an impactful one, right? I think he did really good there. But yeah, he got out of the limelight and it's working behind the scenes. Pretty successful. That's where his passion's at now. Hats off to him.
And then next up, we have a guy named Joe Rubbo. He's playing David, and now David has he's part of the 3 friends. It's Rick, Gary, and David, and he's kind of like the comedy relief, and you kind of feel bad for him because there are a couple moments where it's like, dude, what's going on? But you gotta have those you gotta have that comedy relief character in all these 80s movies. They're a staple. You have to have, whether it's the best friend or it's the brother or whatever. He didn't do a ton of stuff, man. He only did The World According to Garp with Robin Williams, which is a great not a great adaptation, but if you go back and find the original book, it's a great book. But then he did stuff like another sex comedy called Hot Chili, which I think also might have been done by Cannon. And you can only imagine Hot Chili. The premise is a bunch of guys go to Mexico and they party. Pretty much from there, I think he disappeared off the face of the earth.
I don't know what it is about being getting into real estate, but apparently I found that he became a real estate broker in Florida.
Oh, okay.
And that he became a executive producer, the VIP TV. That's what it was called, VIP TV. But they haven't produced anything that I've seen over the last year. I think he's still trying to get into that. I don't know if he does real estate anymore, but he's still around, just in a different format.
Interesting. I couldn't find any listing for him, but beyond those 3 things, it's good to see that he's still doing stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next, believe it or not, now this actress, she has an interesting little role. Kimmy Robertson, she's playing Rose, and she's basically one of Karen's friends, and she has a huge crush on Gary. She actually has a pretty decent career. She went on to do stuff like My Mom's a Werewolf in 89, Bad Manners in 84, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Twin Peaks, The Willies. She shows up in Don't Tell Mom, The Babysitter's Dead.
Fun movie.
She does one of the voices for the animated Beauty and the Beast for Disney. She also worked on the animated Tick. She has a whole bunch of stuff. That's just the tip of the iceberg. And believe it or not, apparently, if you listen to the interviews on the Blu-ray disc, her and Diane Franklin are still really good friends, and they still stay in touch. So
that's awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So it's good to see that they're still friends and stuff. And apparently Diane still sees Larry or whatever his name was, Monsoon.
Monsoon, yeah.
Yeah, she shows up at conventions with him all the time, so they still keep in touch too. And she said it's cute because people see them that they're together at the conventions. So and again,
they made up. They made up. See,
I don't want to give anything away. Next up, we have Luisa Moretz, and she plays Carmela. Ooh, the spicy Latina. And she's been in stuff like Happy Days, MASH, Death Race 2000, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So there you go, some street cred right there. The Happy Hooker Goes to Washington. There you go.
Yep.
Up in Smoke, Chained Heat, and of course I have to mention this one because it ties into our theme song, The Rockford Files. She showed 2 episodes. Now, if you guys are listening to the theme song and you're going, man, that sure is a great tune. Well, when John found that, it's a combination of the Rockford Files. Part of that theme song has a little bit of a tidbit. So of course I had to throw that little piece of trivia there in for you.
Her background. She came to America from Cuba. She tried to get in. I think one of the first films she broke out in really was with, like you said, Death Race 2000 with David Carradine.
Yeah.
And then she went on to do several other things. Another one of my favorites, I think, I don't know, we'll have to talk about this, but she makes an appearance in a movie with Chevy Chase and Carrie Fisher, Under the Rainbow. We might have to talk about that one. And apparently she became a lawyer back in 2000 something. But it's like with anything, right? You don't pay your dues, you don't do something, they ended up, trying to get you pay extra or whatever. So basically she ended up getting disbarred, but she made her mark in Hollywood in the sense that I believe it's still around today, but she bought a hotel and called it the St. Moritz, something like that. Yeah. So I still think it's around. She's definitely one of those spicy actress in the sense of bubbly personality. Matter of fact, that was her name in Chained Heat, right? Bubbles, I think was her character name in Chained Heat. Yeah, she was just fascinating to look back at her filmography and get into a little bit of her life. Unfortunately, rest in peace, Louisa. She unfortunately took a bad fall while visiting DC. Just was not able to recover from that. But yeah, she made her mark.
At this point, I figure I'll get into the script now. I will tell you guys ahead of time. I do my best to try to get a lot of the details in the script. I try not to give every single last thing away, but I do try to give you a good bulk of it. And like I said, this thing you can find online, guys. You just got to Google it. You will find it. I forget the name of the website, but it's out there. And then, like I said, it is worth picking up on disc, I think, if you're going to spend the money. There's a couple different people that have it. I think Olive Films put out a copy. MVD put out a copy.
And MV
it's not a print.
Yeah, I got to give some props to MVD because so I bought Joe Don Baker and joysticks, and it comes with like it's not exactly the original movie poster, but they do kind of like a retro movie poster from the movie that you just bought, and I got the MVD version of Last American Virgin, and I opened it up. I was like, oh my god, there's the poster. I was like, this is so awesome. These guys are doing it right in terms of going back and bringing some of these films back to life.
Yeah, and what I like about them is, there's a million different boutique labels out there, and it's getting to the point where it's like, as a collector, as much as I want to have certain movies because I know they're not available on streaming, they're just getting so ridiculous with some of the pricing where, like, you want to have it in the collection, but it's like, do I want to spend $40 to have it in the collection? You know what I mean? And it's like, I can do that. MVD is actually usually pretty reasonable, which is another thing I like about them. They put out a good product. They give you like the mini poster sometimes. They give you extra features in the disc, which is nice. So they're definitely one of the better companies out there.
Absolutely.
So yeah, at this point, guys, like I said, I'm going to get into the script a little. We start off the movie and we're introduced to a high school student, and his name is Gary, and he's living in LA. And it starts off, and we find out he's a pizza delivery driver for a local pizza business. And you see this big station wagon. It's gaudy as all hell. It's got this pizza on top. And we see him talking to his boss, and his boss is lecturing him about something. And basically, he says, I I can borrow the car tonight, right? And it's like, no, you got to bring the car back. So right off the get go, we see our Gary character, and he's dejected because he's like, oh shit, what am I going to do? I want to go out with my friends and have a good time. Gary's one of these guys that I can definitely relate to because I've always been the tall, skinny guy. Gary's not quite as tall as myself, but he's the skinny guy. He's not necessarily a nerd, but he's not the guy that, he's not the ladies' man, right? He's not that guy that has that sense of self-confidence when he walks in the room and all eyes are on him. He's one of those guys that kind of just fits in, and he's a little bit on the sensitive side. So that, just by looking at him, I feel like that's kind of established. You kind of get that vibe. Right after that, we're introduced to his two best friends, Rick, who's the fast-talking ladies' man, and then we got David, who's kind of like the comedy relief. He's a little bit on the chubbier side. He's always getting into trouble. They're both interesting characters in their own way for different reasons. So we start the movie off later that night, and the boys are hanging out at the local soda shop. Now, who knew that in the 80s they hang out at local soda shops? Because we didn't have a local soda shop. We hung out. We went to the mall and hung out in the arcade, or we hung out at one of our friends' house. But apparently this was the thing back in LA in the 80s if you were a teenager. In walks this girl, and of course, this is Karen. We're introduced to Karen, played by Diane Franklin, and she's a stunner. And of course, the music kicks in, and we see Gary, and he makes eye contact with her, and it's just like he's smitten right off the get-go. They have like an awkward exchange, but they don't introduce themselves. And he finds out that she's new to the area, and she's just moved in, so she's the new girl. And right off the get-go, like I said, you just see the look on Gary's face, and he's in love, Our next scene, we're still at the soda shop, and we see the boys, and they're sitting down in a booth, and they see these three girls in the corner, and they're like, hey, what about those three girls? And basically, they go up to the three girls, and they convince these three girls that there's going to be a party they're all going to. And the girl's like, oh, a party? And the one girl, is like, is there going to be drugs? Because she wants the drugs. She wants some of that sweet, sweet cocaine, baby. And of course, this is the interesting part about this one is the girl that's interested in the drugs looks like the biggest, she seems like the one that seems like the most boring of the three. Like, she doesn't seem like she'd be the girl that would even be interested in drugs. But anyway, they don't go to an actual party. Instead, it's all a ruse. They go back to Gary's house because his parents are out. They start playing some music. And of course, Rick, the ladies' man, pairs off with one of the girls. He starts dancing with her. Then he starts making out, and he moves into one of the bedrooms. And of course, he gets his groove on.
I was going to say, what could he have been doing back there?
I know, what nefarious could a young teenager be doing with a smoke show, right? Our goofy comedy relief, even he's getting his groove on, And of course, Gary has the most milquetoast girl of the three. She just does not want to do anything. She's awkward. He's trying to make conversation. He's trying to move in closer on the couch. Eventually he does one of these where he tries to put his arm around her, and she's just looking at him, and she's kind of lecturing. She's like, I don't know what you're doing, but you're not going to get anywhere. He gets to the point where he pulls out a pair of scissors from the sewing kit because he's trying to get her bra off, and he literally cuts the scissors off, and she's kind of really awkward. She's kind of letting him do his thing, but neither of them are really that interested. You could tell that she's really not into Gary, and Gary's just like, well, I got to be doing something here.
She's more interested in that bowl of chips than Gary. And Gary, to the point, folks, he gets her in an MMA chokehold, right? To get this damn brawl, and she's just going, okay, what the hell's going on? It's just
now, because I'm forgetful. One thing I will mention. Before the guys pair off with the girls and go into the bedroom, they get to the house, and these girls want the drugs. They want that sweet, sweet cocaine. And of course, these guys don't have access to cocaine. So they stumble into the kitchen like idiots, and they're like, what are we going to do? And David's like, hey, you got any Sweet and Low?
Yeah.
And they get a mirror, and they pour the Sweet and Low on one of these little compact mirrors that a woman would have, and they make it look like they're lines of cocaine. So I think when the girls go to use it, I don't think these girls have ever done cocaine in their life because they're acting like, oh man, yeah, I kind of feel it. Yeah, that feels good. And the other girl, I think, is just following the lead of the first girl that said that.
We do not condone the use of illegal drugs, especially yayo. So don't do it.
Don't do it. God damn it. Stick to the legal stuff. There's plenty of legal stuff that'll fuck you up.
Beer and booze, folks. Beer and booze.
Absolutely. So, of course, just when Gary is making some progress, and I won't use the word progress with a positive sound to my voice, because as you pointed out, it's like trying to fight like a sumo wrestler to get to second base, just to get a squeeze of that boob, you know?
Oh, my goodness gracious.
But just as he finally manages to get that bra off with the scissors, of course, what walks in but his mom and his dad, and they freak out. And of course, everybody runs out of the rooms, out of the house, so we think. But David did not run out of the house. So the girl that he pairs up with tells him that she's shy, and for him to step out into the balcony and count to 100, and then to come back into the bedroom, and then to just climb in the bed. Well, the parents come home, they freak out. Basically, everybody leaves the house, but David's still stopped. He's still in the balcony. He's counting to 100. He finally gets to 100, and he crawls into the bed. Now, what he doesn't realize is mom is so freaked out and overwhelmed by these naked girls running around the house that she lays down in the bed. Of course, we have an awkward moment where David and the mom look at each other, and they both freak out. He goes running out of the house. So we cut to our next day, and we have the boys, and it's gym class, and they're in the locker room, and we see like this one particularly overly nerdy character, I will say. I won't even say character, but character of a 1980s nerd, and he's doing the Porky's thing where he's looking through the eye hole in the locker room at the girls. And they all catch him, and they proceed to kind of make fun of him. His name is Victor, and basically Victor says, "Oh, you guys don't know what you're talking about. I have a bigger cock than all of you." And then they get into, and this is where things get a little bit awkward for me. Not that I'm a homophobe or I care about the size of your cock or anything, but they get into this competition where they basically all pull out their cocks and they measure them, and that I had never seen that. I've seen Porky's lowbrow 80s sex comedies, but they get into this competition where they're all pulling out their cocks and they're measuring their penises, And of course, Victor apparently does have the biggest penis. Go Victor. They could have omitted that scene. I think. I wouldn't have lost any sleep if they didn't have that scene.
Yeah, I think so. This came out in '82, right? I think Porky's came out before that, a year or two before that. So I think this was like their version of the shower scene.
Yeah.
Because they started that way with Victor taking his little sneak peek, but then they went this route, and it's like, oh, there's the reason why I forgot this particular part of the movie. It's just one of those fast forward.
Yeah, I don't need to see a room full of dudes in their cocks.
Yeah, because honestly, it doesn't happen that way, folks. I've never, ever, ever heard of that, or in being here 52 years, never heard of that situation from anybody. But anyway.
Never got to that situation, but
no.
So we flash forward a little into the story here, and basically we establish a love triangle. Gary, of course, is very smitten with Karen, but she doesn't know he really exists, other than being a friend of Rick. To start off, basically, this is where I'm not going to say creepy, because I don't know if that's the word. I think Gary is just really in love with this girl. We have a scene where Gary basically finds out from David where Karen lives. He basically, the morning before school, he goes to her house. He sees her little moped that she uses to get to school, and he deflates the tire, and then he backs up his car and waits for her to leave the house, and then just happens to show up just as she's getting out of the house, and, "Oh, you have a flat tire, you need a ride?" And he offers a ride to school, and basically they have an exchange where they're introducing each other, and he's trying to make her laugh. He's like, "Oh, your name is Sharon? Marin? Where? Oh, no, silly, it's Karen." So you have this awkward exchange where Gary's really I'll use the word try hard. He's really trying hard to just try to leave some sort of a lasting impact with her. They're like, "Hey, look at me, I'm the silly funny guy. You should, give me a chance." They get to school. And he's like, "Hey, are you doing something later on? Do you want to get together?" And she's like, "Oh," and she's polite. She's like, "Oh, I'm really sorry, but I have plans." And then he says, "Let me just be frank with you. Do you have a boyfriend? I'm just curious, And she's like, "No, I don't have a boyfriend." So I think there's this moment right there where I think Gary hears the no boyfriend thing. And he feels like, "Oh, okay, well, there's still room for me to kind of work my magic and maybe make this dream girl a reality. So there's like this sense of hopefulness coming from this guy that probably is a little bit more sensitive, a little bit shyer. Not every guy has those smooth moves, especially at 15, 16 years old. You know what I mean? We can't all be winners. But what happens next is where the heartbreak kind of starts, right? So later that night, we see Gary and the guys. They're at a party at David's house, and he goes up to his friend Rick, and Rick's like, "Hey, Rick, I want to introduce you to my girl. We just started dating, and she's my girl." And she turns around, and of course it's Karen. So earlier that day, she told him she's single, and here she is with his best friend. So like he just you could see like he's just like right in the heart. You know what I mean? He tries to actually convince her to come with him, and as he's drinking a bottle of Jack Daniels, but you can tell that it's not working. She thinks he's a nice guy, but he ends up just getting plastered and stumbling home drunk. When he gets home, his parents are entertaining, some neighbors, and they're conversating, and he basically makes an ass of himself because he it's very clear that he's drunk, and his parents are trying to get him to go to his bedroom. He ends up basically hitting on one of his parents' friends, neighbors, who's an older lady, and she's kind of shocked, and there's this awkward exchange. He tries singing this like goofy song. I forget what her name was, but like Mrs. Smith, I love you. It was some really awkward song.
That was bad.
It was bad. Like I can relate to the Gary character because like I was never I'm not like this social leper or anything in high school, but I was never that guy that like had the confidence to go up to like a girl. Even when I actually had a chance, there was one girl that actually really liked me, and I just chickened out completely because I just didn't have that. I didn't have that self confidence as a 15, 16, 17. It probably wasn't until I was much older where I really like had my own sense of self confidence. So I kind of get it to some degree. I don't know if Gary's approaching this whole Karen situation in the best way. Deflating a tire isn't the healthiest way. Offering a ride. There's some things that are probably a little bit suspect. But I think his heart is pure. He's well-intentioned. He's trying to go after the dream girl. You know what I mean?
Well, we'll circle back on that heart is pure stuff. But seriously, so
there's
guys, if you're still single and you're still looking, okay, acts of vandalism?
Yes.
No.
No.
That's just like saying, "Oh no, I see your dog died. Can I help?" No, it doesn't work like that. Yeah. I get what he's trying to do, and I wholeheartedly believe, fellas, ladies, you miss 100% of the shots that you do not take.
Oh, absolutely.
So take those shots, and he's trying, but yeah, he's trying a little bit too hard, and I don't think he ever heard the term crashing and burning too often, because it doesn't work out quite a bit for him at the start.
No. I mean, there's see when I rewatched the film, and again, I don't want to reveal too much in my opinion, but we were watching the movie. Like the first time I watched the movie, I'm like, man, that's just, god damn it, that's fucked up, and I'm ready to curse. I'm ready to curse one person out in particular.
Yeah.
I like him really hard, man. Like him really hard. But then the more and more I rewatches this film, and again, I don't want to give too much away, but the more and more I rewatch the film, it's not that I still don't have that gut reaction after I'm done watching it, but there's some stuff that hints at things, some cues that could have been taken where certain actors or certain characters wouldn't have felt the blow as hard. And I'll leave it at that. Yeah. And that will make a lot more sense if you haven't seen the movie when we reveal our final thoughts. Gary's going to deliver a pizza. He meets this Latina lady named Carmela, who's probably in her late 30s, maybe early 40s. She's still a knockout. And she basically tells Gary, she's looking for more than pizza, if you know what I mean. She's looking for that extra pepperoni, a little extra, bringing that sausage, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh.
But again, Gary's a little on the shy side, so he's not ready to show her the extra toppings just yet. So he said, instead of doing that, he's like, I'll get my friends with me and we'll pull off the full toppings. So he gets David and Rick, and they go back to Carmela's house, and they each show up with a little pizza pie, and she's like, "Oh, boys, come inside and we'll have a pizza party."
Oh.
Carmela starts cranking out some music, and she starts dancing with Rick. And the next thing you know, her and Rick are in the bedroom, and things get pretty intense. Rick definitely shows her his extra toppings, and then
special sauce.
he shows her the extra special sauce. Here you go, Carmela. Things get a little bit more intense. Rick has a good time, and then of course it's David's turn. And fucking David, man, I forget the exact music they play, but they play like this ridiculous music. And he comes in and she's like, "Oh, don't be shy, big boy. Come on over." And he's just see David, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with being a big boy, but David drops trow, and you just see the most awkward sex moment between him and Carmela. The thing that's percolating through my brain is like, listen, I'm open-minded, as a guy, as a person, a human being. But then I'm thinking, okay, well, there's 3 guys, and 2 of the guys already took their turns. And at this point, Rick is out there with Gary, and they're like looking for the people watching David go to town. And then what happens is David finishes, and Carmela takes a little bit of a break. She steps out with a cigarette, and she's like, looks at Gary, and she's like, "Are you ready? Are you ready?" And then basically, at that moment, we see walking down the street, we see a guy that's a sailor, and we find out his name is Paco. And Paco walks in, and he goes, "What's going on here?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm just giving these young students some Spanish lessons." Which at first he's like, "Oh, okay." He kind of like not really believing, but he's willing to buy into it a little bit. And then out walks David with his gut, and he's just sitting there in his boxers and his big old gut hanging out, and he's half nude. And then Paco, of course, freaks out and chases him down the house. We get these comedy relief moments. Up to this point, this movie is a lot of so up to this point in the movie, this movie has a lot of this comic relief, like these Porkies, Screwballs, Hamburger, like all those type of like sex comedy tropes that you'd expect from an 80s sex comedy, with a couple little moments where we see like Gary freak out because he's not getting what he wants with Karen. There's a couple dramatic moments up to this point, but it's, for the most part, it's primarily a sex comedy up to this point. Basically, next what happens, we see Rick approach Gary. He's like, "Hey, Gary, I know your grandmother passed away a year ago, and you guys have this house that you don't use. I want to take Karen out tonight, and I want to bring her to the house so we can finally, get it on." And what ends up happening is Gary, of course, is resentful, and he doesn't want to help his best friend sleep with the girl he wants to sleep with, that he's in love with. So later that night, basically, Rick approaches him like, "Oh, you got the keys?" And he's like, "Oh, I couldn't find the keys." So Rick gets, freaks out. It's like, "What am I going to do? What am I going to do?" And basically, David and Gary tell him, "Oh, well, you're pussy whipped anyway. You've been spending all this time with that girl. Me and David, we're going to go sleep with this prostitute, man. We've already slept with her 9 times. And Rick's getting a little bit like pissed. He's like, "What do you mean 9 times? He's like, "You're going to sleep with a prostitute?" And he's like, "You're not interested, Rick." Rick's like, got something at stake at this point. His manhood is at stake. So he blows off Karen, and they go sleep with this prostitute. Now this time, good old Gary, he gets first turn up at bat, unlike Carmela. But they get this prostitute who's the nastiest thing you've ever seen. She's skeevy. She's smoking cigarettes. She's got a bad attitude. She's like, "Will you just drop your trowel and do it? Your 2 friends are waiting." So he's like trying to fuck her in the most awkward way possible, and he ends up like throwing up essentially. The other 2 guys get their turn, but the next day at school, they're going in to take a class, and they have a big quiz, and you see Gary go to Rick. He goes, "Hey, Rick." And they're supposed to be taking this test. And he's like, "Yeah, what's up?" He's like, "Dude, aren't you scratchy? Because I couldn't sleep at all last night. I've been itching all night." And you see them both itching. And he's like, "Yeah, me too." And then they approach David, and David's like, "Hey, dude, are you itching?" And David's like, "Yeah, man, I've been fucking itching all fucking day. I can't do anything about it." So basically, the teacher throws them out of the classroom. They go through a series of attempts to try to get rid of the crabs. They try going into the local swimming pool, public swimming pool, because they heard that if you go to the swimming pool that you can drown the crabs out. Karen and the girl Rose show up, and they're like, "Oh, hi, guys." And they're having this nice little conversation, and they're okay for a minute, but then they jump back into the water because it's got to the point where the crabs are just burning. And basically, they end up going to a drugstore, and they have this really awkward conversation with the pharmacist, because none of them want to admit to the pharmacist that they have crabs. And basically, like, yeah, well, we got this thing where it's really itchy. And he's like, oh, you need some dandruff shampoo? And she's like, no, it's not dandruff shampoo. No, it's like a little bit lower. And he's like, what are you talking about, a little lower? And then, like, Gary looks down on his crotch like this. And he's like, oh, you got crabs, huh? And he gives him the medicine. So, again, you have a lot of these, you get a lot of these really, like, sex comedy moments. And that's what's really interesting about this film. And again, we'll get into it. But this movie, like, if you're watching this movie up to this point, with the exception of, like, Gary kind of throwing, like, this crybaby hissy fit at the couple moments where he didn't get his way with Karen, and there's some sad music that plays. With the exception of those key moments up to this point, you really I'm thinking this is like, like a Porky's or Screwballs or Hamburger or one of these sex comedies. Now, just curious for you, like, you're watching the movie. What about you when you're watching the movie up to this point? What are you thinking as a viewer?
No, I think you nailed it, right? I think is this trying to be a Porky's clone, a Screwballs clone, Meatballs clone? Is it because it's wow, if these guys are like saying this is kind of like based off some real life experiences, I'm going, holy crap, you guys made some very bad decisions. Because prostitute, no, folks, no, don't, no, save yourself, no, and yes, crabs do not drown. It just doesn't happen. I don't care how much chlorine is in that pool water, just don't. And number two, that's nasty.
Yeah.
It's a public pool, people. Don't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just some of the absurdity to it. But the one thing I do remember, and coming back on a second watch, really picking up on it in the direction of how this was going to go was, as you said, right? He's a pizza delivery driver, and the station wagon. Yeah, it's station wagon jalopy, but it's pink.
Yeah,
and the name of the pizza joint is called The Pink Pizza. What does that kind of tell you about this movie, buddy? You know what I mean?
The only thing that could have been to be like more obvious would have been if they would have made it a taco joint, and they would.
You know what I mean?
Taco.
I think that's why they stayed away from it. But up to this point, I do get it. I remember my first crush. I remember being, that shy kid, because again, growing up and, as a part of a military family, we're moving around like every 3 years. So it's always a start over point, right? So it's like, I like this girl, but, I'm too scared to talk to her because I know I'm leaving soon and blah, blah, blah. So I get it. The joking around with the name, right? It's like, she's like, no, it's Karen. Bye, Gary. It's like, damn, that was fast. She just like drop kicked you in the nuts, dude. Just accept that fact and go. But he keeps trying. He has a pure heart. It's like, I can understand it to one extent, but then, he goes to deliver the pizza and hangs around for that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, so to clarify my thoughts, right? Not completely, but I think that the creepiest thing he does is the bike thing, right? Obviously, being a horny teen, sleeping with a prostitute is never a good idea. And trying to sleep with the Latin lady that wants you to be third in line in the freeway. I think for me, like, the intention of trying to pursue the girl that you want, even if realistically it's not going to happen. I don't think he's a bad guy. I just think he doesn't have a clue.
Right. Yeah.
He doesn't have a clue that the girl's not into him.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say. His mind and his heart, part of his heart, like the upper left quadrant of his heart is there, right? That's the pure part, because he does find somebody he really wants to be with, but the other part of his brain and the other parts of his heart is just like you said, the horny teen. Because again, vandalism's not good. Don't do it, folks. Trying to entice people for some sweet and low yayo cocaine adventures, no, it's not good. It's not good, people. And especially if a prostitute says it's only $30.
I mean, that's a bargain.
Come on,
people. No bargain. When you get a bargain offered in front of you,
there's some deals you should pass on. A Porky's Light moments up to this point is where I ended up falling in line with just some of the things. It's like as a guy who was, again, had his heart, had his puppy crushes,
Yeah.
puppy loves, or whatever they called it, crushes and stuff. I could relate to some scenes, but then there's some scenes that are just over the top. Like, I don't remember that happening. So, yeah.
I couldn't afford a prostitute, okay? $30 was way too much money, all right?
Hey, plausible deniability.
Exactly. Plus, let's face it, no one wants to. There's always the fear of prostitute and like what you're going to possibly walk away with. Like they press. You don't know how many clients you had the night before, and I didn't see anybody slipping on a condom. I'll just say that.
Yeah, This is not a version of Naked Gun that you want to be part of, people.
Yes, exactly. So moving along, we get to slightly more different tone as far as the film goes. We see Rick and Karen finally get their date, and Rick is determined to make things happen with Karen, regardless of whether he has access to a place to make it happen or not. And we see them go into the school bleachers, and Gary, I guess, sees the car parked, her moped parked in the Solo lot parking lot. He kind of like does a little snooping, and he kind of sees them like in the act of doing their deed. And again, we see Gary, and he's just like broken into two, right? He's just like, like he can't believe that this would happen. He's kind of living in his own reality, if you will. He's not really as friendly with Rick at this point because he's upset about that. But then a few days later at school, we see a scene where we see Rick and Karen, and they're arguing at school, and basically Rick dumps her, and Gary finds out the reason that he dumped her was because she got pregnant, and Rick didn't want to have anything to do with it. I know. So we get into that serious tone, and he's pissed off, and he confronts Rick, and basically a big kind of fight, breaks out, and he calls him a slime ball, and he can't believe he would do something like that. You know what I mean?
And folks, don't get confused. This was not a Buddy and Jerry Mitchell type fight. So
yeah, no, it's not like it's not a 3:00 high out in the parking lot.
Exactly.
It's basically that conversation. Listen, I have a couple. Like I probably had two best friends. One of them unfortunately passed away, and I have another best friend. I don't see nearly enough. But because they're best friends, you can go up to them and you can have like those moment of truths and not be afraid to say it as bluntly as possible. Like, and if you truly have like at least one person like that in your life, even if it's just one, you found a good friend, because you need to be able to call people out on their shit, even if it comes off in the wrong way every once in a while. And I think that's what Gary's trying to do. He's saying like, hey, like, this girl is crazy about you. You had this wonderful thing that I wish I had. And basically, the only reason you fucking dumped her is because you got her knocked up and you don't want to deal with the responsibilities of that. And Rick basically just says, oh, you're just jealous. I know that you're jealous. I know you had a thing for her. And basically, the fight's broken up. Gary finds Karen. And again, he tries to he's well-intentioned. You can see that she's upset. He tries to comfort her. And she's like, this doesn't have anything to do with you. But he's like, listen, I can help you. And basically, David and Rick and a lot of the high school kids go on this big skiing trip that weekend. And Gary basically brings Karen to his grandmother's house, which is this house that, like I said, his grandmother passed away a year ago. And basically, he helps pay for the abortion. We see a scene where he goes, but sneaks back into his house. He grabs some stereo equipment. He pawns that. He goes to his boss and convinces his boss to give him basically an advance on his money, his paycheck. And he does everything he can to try to come up with the money. And basically, he pays for the entire abortion. Now, what's interesting, and I didn't catch this the first time, but then I watched it in a second viewing, just from like the way it was directed, there was an interesting thing that I thought was a little bit rough. She gets into the abortion clinic, and the doctor tells her to lay down. And just as he's about to operate on her, we cut to a scene with Gary at the pizza shop, and he's asking the boss for money, and we see the pizza cutter cut through the pizza slip, the background, like they use the pizza cutter to cut the thing. So just literally, as she's laying down and they're about to perform the operation, the next scene directly after that is the pizza cutter. And I was watching that, I was like, wow, they're really, really driving home a point there. You know what I mean? Like, over the course of this weekend, Gary takes care of her. He tries to let her know that he's there for her. She's thankful. She's appreciative of Gary. She realizes that he's a nice guy, effectively. And the weekend kind of closes with him telling her, it's like, I just need to tell you something. I've been in love with you since the minute I met you. And she kind of looks at him, and it's like she doesn't know what to say. She doesn't say "I love you" back, but he goes in to kiss her, and of course she kisses him back. Up to this point, like I said, I had seen this movie quite a bit because I really, really like this movie, and I think I was really, like a lot of people, really impacted by this movie. This movie really like landed a lot of blows on me because I've been through some situations, even as an adult, with relationships, not finding someone that I connected with, or not having that luck that I would have liked to, going to bat and just having these moments of like stress in a relationship, and just having that moment, like watching this, and just it reminded me of a lot of relationships that I've been through, some good, some bad. Up until this point, I had never realized that like this was something she might be doing just because she didn't know what else to do at this point. Like she's with him. She did pay for the abortion. He did take care of her the entire weekend. He's being this genuinely nice guy. And I think with that kiss in Gary's mind, he kind of feels like, hey, I finally made it happen. I finally made my dream girl kind of like have feelings for me. But in retrospect, I don't think personally when I watched that scene, I don't think she really has the feelings that he has. I think she's grateful, and I think she's in a situation where she's pressured. Now I'm curious because this is one of the pivotal scenes when you're watching that unplay that scene unfold. What's your takeaway on that particular scene? I'm genuinely curious how you interpret it.
Well, if you don't mind, let's wrap up the script because my thoughts are going to tie them both together.
Yeah. Okay, I'll move forward. So basically, from there, I don't know how he manages to do it, but Gary manages to come up with some money, like $100, I think it is. He gets this gold amulet. He has it engraved. The guy even says it's going to take a couple days. He says, "Oh, but her big birthday party is tomorrow. Can you have it done by tomorrow?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, kid, I'll do it." So he picks up this amulet, and you see him pull up in his car. It's nighttime, and you see him stroll to the party, and they're playing some party music. And he runs into David, and David's like, "Oh, I don't know where she's at." But then he runs into that nerdy kid, Victor, and he's like, "Oh, I think she's in the kitchen." So you see him open the kitchen door, and we hear that music from the Commodores, and it's this song that just perfectly complements this moment in time. It's called "Oh No," and she's embraced in the arms of Rick, and they're kissing. And what's really interesting in the way that, and I'm not the best at breaking down shots, but from a technical level, you see him kissing Rick. He walks in, you see his eyes tear. She turns around her head and she makes direct eye contact with him. And then Rick sees her like looking over at our main character, Gary, and then he sees over. Nobody says anything. There's this moment of silence, and you see just Gary walk away, get in his wagon, turn the key, and just leave. And he's crying. And that's how they end the movie. So it really and again, maybe because I am a sensitive guy, I will acknowledge that. No shame in my game. I'm sensitive. I remember just being absolutely floored. And for some reason, it just dialed back to some of these bad relationships that I've been in. Not all, but a couple. And it just brought back a lot of those memories and just being like, wow, like that is just fucked up.
Oh yeah.
And that's how we end the movie. Now since then, my opinion has not completely changed, but it has evolved, and I'll go into that in a minute. But before I do, I want to hear what your thoughts are as we're finishing up the movie and we're wrapping up our tale of
our sad ballad of Gary's love.
Gary's love.
But so the third act really does, flip the movie on its axis, right? In terms of what are we watching here, right? Instead of a teen comedy, Porky's Light type of movie, it really goes into what probably, unfortunately, several teenagers had to kind of go through, getting pregnant and having to deal with that, or having to deal with the asshole boyfriend dumping them because they got pregnant, or I can't ruin my life. But basically it comes down to a serious decision has to be made. And watching Gary trying to step up, somehow fulfill the role that Rick left. I'll take care of you. Everything's going to be all right. I'll take care of you. The very first time I did watch this, I was a young, preteen, thinking, didn't think of it much then, but as now that I'm much older on a second watch and having gone through a lot of life experiences, it's man, that is not the move, right? That's not gonna end well for you. They weren't cheap in the movie. I think they said it was like $300 some dollars. So you think, back in those days, that's a lot of change. That's a lot of coin. That's a lot of pizza deliveries to scrounge around and then pawn off stuff to get the money to pay for the abortion and pay for the locket or whatever it was that he had engraved. Yeah, I don't think she was pressured or anything like that. As most people do, right? Sometimes they find themselves in a situation they don't know what they're supposed to do, so they'll just reciprocate. Yeah. Does that make sense? So he kissed her, so she's like, "Oh, I'll just give him a kiss back," and then and then he hugs her, right? And I'm like, dude, she just had an abortion. What are you doing here, man? That's not the move. Don't do that. The foreshadowing part is every time he goes somewhere, whether it was David's party or somewhere else, and he runs into Victor. Yeah. That's your telltale sign. Oh man, what the hell's going on now? He walks in the kitchen and that scene, that close-up shot of his face as soon as he opens the door, from smile to oh my God, right? And then the close-up shot of Karen and Rick, embracing in a very passionate kiss. And then to see her, notice she tears up, and then Rick looks over, is like, what did you expect? Type of look. That's the way I looked at it. It's like, what did you expect? And then to see him driving away, and for Gary to actually cry, I felt bad, really bad for his character, because I can relate. Like, most folks, right? There are certain relationships that just don't end well. Yeah. Or certain relationships that never come to fruition because you were never really in the game. Right. Yeah. And there is that heartbreak. And, from personal experiences, after oh my gosh, after the second, I rewatched it, I felt really bad because I immediately remembered how I broke up with somebody over the phone. Mm-hmm. Folks, please don't hate me. Please don't, curse me or anything. But it's like,
you're going to get us canceled.
I broke up with her over the phone while playing a video game.
Oh, man.
That's how dogged that was. Yeah, it was bad. And having watched the conclusion, it's like, man, John, what? You were such an asshole. You should not have done it that way, right? It kind of encapsulates human dynamics, right? Sometimes we see the object of our affection. You may like somebody, but there has to be some signs that kind of clue you in whether they're going to reciprocate or not, right? But and as I said earlier, right, and I said the duality to that, the yin to the yang to that is, you're going to miss 1,000% of your shots if you never take a shot. Yeah. Right. So you have to go through, and it can go even beyond, a relationship, or I'm sorry, not beyond, but in lieu of a relationship, making friends. Again, moving around for so many years, I had to learn that, sometimes people aren't going to come to me. I need to go to people and try to make friends that way, right? And if I never did that, which I didn't, for few rounds, it becomes harder. Relationships, absolutely. Even with people like neighbors, or hell, it's why, like, at a restaurant, or your server, it's extend that, those niceties, those places, build that type of relationship so that you have a nice time versus something going wrong or whatever. If any of that makes sense, it's crazy to see how, even watching it again in today's times, how impactful that final shot of Gary really is, right? With the tears coming down. I think it was the Commodore singing "Oh No." Yeah. Just because somewhere along the life, you relate to that moment, that feeling, feel the pain that he's going through, whatever the situation brought it out. I mean, you have to relate. that's why that last scene is so impactful for me,
Yeah.
because no matter what it is, it hits you in the gut. All the other stuff earlier on in the movie, all the hijinks, the craziness, the wasted $30, folks. That end shot, that shot of Gary just driving away, dejected, heartbroken, realizing that he was a complete fool. This movie, Last American Virgin, it is truly like an late 70s, 80s movie. Heavily borrows from a lot of stuff, but I think the point driven, and I've never seen Lemon Popsicle, so I'm gonna have to go back to watch to kind of see how they stack up.
Yeah,
but it is wholly relatable in not the first 2/3 of the movie. I don't remember going through all that.
One of those times with the hooker.
Yeah, right. I definitely did not do that.
The pizza delivery where you get to drop off the pizza and give her a little extra toppings.
I've worked at a Pizza Hut, but I've never delivered pizza. But that last scene, that last 4 minutes, not last 5 minutes, the last 4 minutes of that film ended not the way that I want. The hero lives, but it's after that you got to wonder, young teen, your heart's just completely stomped on, shattered. It's like, does he live to fight another day? I don't know.
Well, you know what? I'm curious to see how crazy they go with the Lemon Popsicle movie, and because, like I said, there were like 5 or 6 sequels. I'm curious to see what direction do they go. Do they completely take it in a completely Porky's direction, or does he meet another girl in the sequel and they have an actual relationship? There's 6 movies, so I'm assuming some of them are probably fluff movies that are basically Porky type movies.
Right.
At some point, there's got to be one where the guy fucking gets the happy ending.
Well, and that's where I kind of hope. But you mentioned the title, right? I think it's the 3rd or 4th one. It's called Private Popsicle. I was like, well, shit, he must have really failed and had to join the army before something really good happened. It's but I think what he established with this version of his remake of his original movie, I think it warranted enough curiosity for me that I am going to try to find some copies or find them online and give them a shot to see again how they stack up to this point.
Yeah, no, absolutely, no, definitely. For me, I don't know, man. It's so hard to really even encapsulate how I feel, and that seems like a cop out. But I'm going to attempt it. I think the first time I saw it, and even up until recently, every time I saw this movie, I was just relating to just being that guy that didn't have a lot of confidence, especially in my late teens, even early 20s, and just being that fucking dude. There was it was black and white. There was no zone in, look at her side of things. It was that fucking bitch. This guy fucking paid for your abortion. He took care of you. Yeah, he deflated your tires and he did some cocaine and slept with a hooker, but you didn't know about that bitch. For all you knew, that was nothing. All this guy did was worship you, and you gave him nothing. So that was listen, I realized that was a very simple-minded way of looking at the movie, and that was my looking at it through the lens of the character, and having gone through my own fucking nightmare experiences with some relationships. When I first saw the film, I completely saw that black and white, narrow-minded point of view. Now, after multiple viewings, I think what I started to realize is that, yeah, Gary was a horny teenager. Otherwise, he wouldn't have fucking slept with the 40-year-old pizza lady. Well, he never got his chance, mind you now.
Yeah.
Just the only thing he ended up actually sleeping with was the hooker. Because the one girl in the beginning, she wouldn't let him get past the nacho tray.
No.
All I got was a boob grab before mom and dad got home.
Yeah.
And I think part of the message that's trying to say is when he finally did get to sleep with somebody, and it was the hooker, he was so in love with Karen, and then you have this nasty hooker. I think there's this idea of it just made him sick to his stomach because he wasn't losing his virginity in this pure sense of the way. He wasn't doing it with with the love of his life, or even a girl that he liked. It was this hooker, and he just wanted to lose his virginity. You know what I mean? So that, I think my initial view, like I said, my initial viewing of this when I first saw this movie was very black and white. It was fuck this fucking bitch. She's fucking evil. I know I'm being harsh, but and she's a fucking knockout, Diane Franklin, and one of the sweetest people you'll ever meet. But I had such a fucking almost angry, I'll say it, almost angry fucking viewpoint towards her. I was like, this fucking, I'm using the word fucking a lot, guys. Okay.
I'll bleep those out later.
No, keep them in, But, I think as we go on, you can't help but see things from a point of view of like, hey, she wasn't attracted to Gary. Obviously, if she was, the first time he asked her out, she would have said yes. Gary isn't a complete creeper, but yes, he did deflate the tire in her moped. Yeah, Gary wasn't so in love with her that he couldn't try to sleep with the hooker or sleep with the pizza lady. He's not completely 100% good guy. Not that he's a bad guy. And then it just boils down to, Rick in a moment went from being the ladies' man, and I think he probably still would have ended up cheating on her character. I think
no doubt
ended up guaranteed they're not together like in this fictional world. He's going to sleep with the next girl that's really hot that allows him to. That's who Rick is. So I'm not going to say Rick is this nice guy, but the reality is the way relationships work is sometimes women or men have to still like with Karen's character. I think she has to come to the realization that Rick is who he is on her own. And the reality is that she just was never going to give Gary a chance because she just wasn't into Gary.
Right.
She saw Gary as a nice guy, which is why she tried to set Gary up with Rose because she thought Rose would be a perfect match. And Rose actually was pretty cute, A. And B, she really was really into Gary. But Gary was so obsessed with Karen that he just didn't want to give her a chance. You know what I mean? Like he was just like,
what's it called? Forbidden fruit syndrome?
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like my end game is Karen. And I think finally when he finally gets to that part where he gets that kiss in his mind, when he gets that kiss from Karen, he thinks that like, okay, I've become
score.
He's like, it's the God complex. He's like, I finally got my thing. I finally got her to see me in the light that I've always wanted her to see me in. And I think that's his mindset. He's like, she finally sees me for who I am. The good guy that would never, ever do this to her like Rick did. Yep. The guy that would take care of her and that would love her and would cherish her and all these things. He's got this like mindset in his mind. But what he doesn't realize, and like I said, I'm an idiot because it took me for this long to figure it out myself, is that, like she just doesn't connect with Gary. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what it boils down to. Even if she doesn't end up with Rick in the long term, she doesn't connect with Gary. And I think because Gary he can't get past that idea. He just thinks that he's finally made a connection with her. When we finally get to that scene, it's just like, he's just broken at that point. Like, he's just this broken man because he really thinks that, like, hey, she finally sees me for who I am. This guy that came to the rescue, this guy that would cherish her, this guy that would never do the things that Rick does to her, and he's just broken. You know what I mean? And again, like I said, it took me a while to get to that point of view because, like I said, when I first watched it, dude, I was just, fuck this. I can't believe this shit. I can't believe she would be that much of a ruthless person. And I still think, listen, I'm not going to let the character of Karen off the hook completely. I still think what she did was fucked up because even if she wasn't into Gary, she shouldn't go back to Rick. I mean, Rick fucking basically told her he dumped her when he wouldn't take any responsibility, whether it was keep the kid or an abortion or anything. She still shouldn't have gone back to Rick.
No, I mean, they showed it. They were going on the ski trip, and there's Rick tongue wrestling some other chick, right? You said it right.
So,
but I think I'm sorry. Go ahead. At
the end of the day, I think Gary was just, he was in love with this girl, but he was not able to acknowledge the telltale signs that are sprinkled throughout the movie that she just wasn't ever going to happen with her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and absolutely.
I think, like I said, it took me multiple viewings before I got to that point. Maybe I need to sharpen up my movie viewing skills, but I honestly didn't take that away. It took me a while before I got to that point where I could see it from that point of view. So that's pretty much my closing thoughts.
Yeah, and I'll let me just finish with this, right? And this is where, like I said, life experiences, right? And for those in our audience who listen, they understand it, right? That what this movie really, I think, accurately portrays is what the friend zone. The friend zone exists.
Oh, absolutely.
he was just blind to everything else. Because again, I mean, we've all been there, right? An object of affection. It doesn't matter what it is, right? We have to have it. We don't see, you know, what you mentioned, right? The telltale signs, right? Whereas again, life experiences, I'm on the second watch, I'm like, yeah, shouldn't have been, no, don't do, dude, don't do, oh, you did it anyway. But you know what I mean? It's the friend zone exists. So
Sometimes it doesn't matter whether you're a great guy or not. If she's not into you, she's just not into you. You know what I
and
mean?
there, and it's not until, and it's funny, right? It's funny how things work. You know, it's male, it's men and women, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, you don't like me, I'm going to move on, and I'm so, oh, I can't believe, why didn't I do? Oh, shut up.
Yeah.
You know, get in the car like Gary, go drive down and cry because, yeah, you know,
open up your bottle of Jack and drink your bombs away like a real man. God damn it.
Yeah, and I back in those days, I knew Jack so well, I called them Jim. So it's
good old Jimmy Dean.
Yeah. But yeah, this movie's ending, man, it hits hard. And I don't care what age you are, right? It's gonna bring back memories because
absolutely, dude.
I mean, Gary. I don't think to the extent where Gary's like, "Hi, Karen, here's my heart," and she's like, "Thank you," and I'm just gonna stomp all over. No, I don't think we've been there, but the emotions that come out, just again, that last 4 minutes, you're right. The music they chose, that Commodore's oh no. If you've experienced any kind of pain like that, you feel for Gary. Even though it's a movie, even though it's a character, it's like, God, that guy. Oh my God.
And I'm gonna just close on one last final thought. I think what really makes this movie, I think, distinguish itself so much from so many other different films is the fact that very few films are willing to be possibly divisive to their audience, will not like the tonal whiplash the film takes when you get to that point in the film where it goes from Porky's, hamburgers, screwballs type movie, and all of a sudden it just flips itself on its head. A lot of people will see that and they're like, well, that's not what I paid for. I paid to see a sex comedy, and now you're taking it to this dark place.
Yeah.
Talk to people that don't like that tonal shift change. But to me, and I know we talked about it briefly, I think on the last episode when we were getting ready to talk about this film, if you look at it in comparison to something like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Fast Times at Ridgemont High also had a great group of young actors who at the time were up and coming. 99% of those people were not names yet. It also dealt with a lot of the same topics. It also dealt with a lot of similar type humor. Some of the raunchy humor probably was a little bit raunchier in this one. Fast Times at Ridgemont High also deals with a situation where somebody gets a girl pregnant and they have to deal with an abortion. It also deals with somebody coming to the rescue. The difference is, and I'm not spoiling anything here, guys. Hopefully you've all seen Fast Times at Ridgemont High. The ending wraps up in this neat bow tie where our titular hero, whose name I can't remember, but he's basically not too distinct from the Gary character. They're similar. Not the same, but they're similar archetypes. But the difference is the girl realizes the value of this guy and they end up together. Now, again, that wraps up with the bow tie ending. Now, back to what you were saying, John, about the telltale signs. The difference is in the telltale signs with Fast Times at Ridgemont High. If you go back and watch Fast Times at Ridgemont High, he, with Jennifer Jason Leigh's character, he actually goes on a date with her in the beginning. Yep. And it's actually a really good date. Except towards, I think at a certain point, he just kind of he's kind of shy. He doesn't take it further because she's ready to sleep with him. And he wasn't ready for that. And he kind of blows things. He kind of screws things up. And then she goes on this journey with a bunch of other men. And then in the end, they end up together. And I think the difference is that initially she went on a date with him in the beginning of the movie. So she actually liked him. So those telltale signs were there from the get-go that she liked the main character in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So he had a positive direction to follow, whereas in this one, Karen's never giving him a sign that she wants to date him at any point.
Yeah, his name just popped into my head. His name was Mark.
Mark, okay.
And I think, yeah, you're right. Yeah, she did like it. So real quick, she did like him, but he was so shy and nervous about the whole situation. He gave out the wrong vibes, which, like you said, then she takes a different turn, but it circles back into a much happier ending.
Yeah. And I still have a lot of love for Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Oh, absolutely.
It's got a script by Cameron Crowe, and like I said, I adore Cameron Crowe up to a certain point. And you got a great director, and Amy Heckerling, I want to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, and that's the distinction between those two films. And I think if I'm not mistaken, I think they were released not the same weekend or anything like that, but they might have been released within the same year. I think either the same year or they were a year apart.
Same year, 1982. Same year.
It would actually be interesting because I don't have I think Criterion released an edition of that. It would be interesting to pick up that Criterion version and do a double feature like a year. I'm not ready to watch Last American Virgin again. I'm fucking traumatized. I'm a 50-year-old man, gonna be 51, and I'm still traumatized by that fucking ending. So I'm not ready to rewatch that movie. But I think it would be an interesting thing to go back and watch both those movies back to back.
I think you're right, but my only issue with Fast Times at Ridgemont High is I can't believe it's a 5.5 hour long movie. Or wait, did I just like pause the movie for like 3 hours?
Oh yeah, you mean that one scene where she ended up dating? She ended up marrying what's his face?
Kevin Kline.
Yes, Kevin Kline. And what's her?
Phoebe Cates.
Phoebe Cates.
Phoebe Cates got her autograph right there.
Oh, there you go. Back in the day, I heard stories about. I never rented that movie because it was always on TV. But apparently, the big thing back in the day with the VHS is apparently they would have issues because supposedly people kept on doing exactly what you're saying. They would pause that scene, rewind, go back to that scene, pause that scene, go back.
Became the most paused scene in VHS history until I forgot what broke that record. But it was
probably Basic Instinct with the Sharon Stone.
Probably.
Yeah. So guys, that closes out today's episode. Like I said, you can find this movie if you Google it. It is some weird website, but it is out there. MVD, though, like I said, put out a beautiful release, and it's not expensive. And it comes with a mini poster, like you said. It comes with a bunch of extra features. It's definitely worth checking out. So that wraps up episode 74. We will be back. We'll have 2 episodes that are going to be released in the next 2 weeks. And then we'll be back in the end of July, and we're going to be talking about a movie you picked called Riders of Justice with Mads Mikkelsen. And I can't wait to dive into that. So I just bit the bullet and bought the Blu-ray, but I'm looking forward to talking about that. We're also going to be talking about, probably in August, we haven't confirmed the date, we'll be talking about another Spotlight episode. It'll be our final Jeff Bridges film called Fat City with Stacy Keach. So those are some upcoming releases, and we want to thank you guys for all listening. Now, if you guys like what you're hearing, or even if you don't, God damn it, write us, say hello. No, I'm joking. We want to hear positive things. But we don't want to cry like Gary. Please, exactly. Please, don't show some love. Babies, just love. Dirty, dirty love. No, just love. Send us an email at now for something different, the number 1 at gmail.com, or you can reach us on the Facebook page, or you can reach us through Facebook Messenger. Send us a hello. Say hi. Tell us what you think. If you have even a request, something you think we should talk about. Now, keep in mind the format of the show is generally films that are lesser known films. So if there's an idea that you think we should talk about, reach out to us, guys. We want to hear what you have to say. And if you have a moment and you're feeling particularly generous, guys, we all have a Facebook channel. Do us a huge favor, man. Take this episode or any of our episodes, hit that share button. Let's get the word out here and spread the love, okay? We appreciate you guys watching. Now, I'm going to do a quick rollout for podcasts you guys should be listening to. We got Brad and Troy. They just released the Watchmen episode, and it's a doozy, guys. They cover a lot. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes, and it's worth it. It's worth it. Yeah, no, it's awesome. They also have a special guest, a gentleman named Alex, who I think is a longtime listener. Sam and Will with the Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema. They just released their episode on Monday, which was Steppenwolf. Of course, we got Watch Skip Plus with Jose and Mike the Wildebeest. If you can't get enough of this freaking face, guys, and trust me, I get tired of it, you can watch me on the newest episode of Watch Skip Plus, because they're talking about The Killer Doll, Megan 2.0, and you have me rambling on about my thoughts about The Killer Doll. We got Raiders of the Podcast, and guys, they're always killing it, man. This week they're doing a Larry Clark film, and they're covering space. What's the Galaxy Quest? Galaxy Quest. Galaxy Quest, yeah. Yeah. So they're giving us a Larry Clark, and they're giving us Galaxy Quest. So if that's not going to traumatize you, I don't know what will. Not the Galaxy Quest, but Larry Clark tends to have that effect. It tends to. That's a Tyler pick, and Tyler always likes to give us some interesting choices. So check out Raiders of the Podcast. Of course, we have Caliber 9 from Outer Space with Rob and Joe. Rob and Joe are always killing it. They're always giving us some variety, so check them out. And then, of course, Death by DVD with Harry Scott Sullivan. So check out that. And like I said, unfortunately, Alex was friends with Cinefex. He's on a hiatus for the time being. But you can go into his back catalog. He's also a fellow YouTube brother. So check him out on YouTube and check out his back catalog. So that wraps up today, guys. And I hope everybody has a very happy 4th of July weekend. Don't blow up any of your fingers. But if you do, remember you got 9 other ones, so you're okay. Drink lots of beer, make some bad choices, and we will see you very soon. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. See you later.